Okay, Don Barnes here, and we're squeezing this in here. Let's see, I gotta change something. So we're gonna talk about ripple edit. We're gonna talk about inserting space. We're gonna talk about some other things going on here. Now I realize I have the wrong preset. I'm gonna switch this real quick. Boom, boom. Okay, that will do better. And yep, we're gonna take that stream mix. Boom. Okay, so now that'll work. So now I might have had a little reverb there. But that's fixed. It's gone. The beauty of doing live. All right, so here's the situation. Jason asked in the group today, he wanted to insert time, meaning at the very beginning of his audiobook, he had recorded and either he had nothing, like people do this all the time. They just start, and then later at the very end, they'll add the appropriate amount of room tone. So I'm going to simulate that. So let's take, so what I'm going to do is show you multiple methods for doing this. If someone's been around for years, there's alternate ways of doing it. If so, you'll find, people very often have different ways of doing it. I've done it about 5 ways over the years, but I'm going to show you some of my top ones, and some of it's easier, some of it's an extra baby step. It's all good. So watch this. So let's assume, so we have to assume a couple different cases. If someone had recorded too much time up front, then the easy thing that they could do is they could take this and they could go ahead, and if they press delete, ooh, see, it left a space there. So what I would do there is, and in the old days, we would select everything else and we would move it over, and I'm going to undo that. So I did that on purpose. But if ripple edit is on, which has been around for about 4.5 years now, if ripple edit is turned on, no matter how many segments I had over here, let me make some extra segments, extra events. And so now we have 3 events, and then we move over some, just highlight a little bit and press delete. Now we have less. So in other words, if you had started recording a chapter in an audiobook or a voiceover or anything else, and you record too much blank space at the very beginning, oh, that's the easiest case. You can just delete some out of it. If you have ripple edit turned on, it'll just move everything over for you. Piece of cake, done. Okay, so that's simple. That should be helping. That should be happening all the time, and it should be easy, and everybody should be totally nailing that one. Okay, so that's the easy case. Yeah, echo on YouTube, fix. Yeah, that was my fault. Thank you for that message, Tim. It was that on my on the Revelator thing, I had 2 inputs set up at the same time. One that would play back. Basically, I had it set up so that it would play back over 2 channels at once, and I just had the wrong preset. I have presets for all that in my Revelator. So when I'm on Zoom, I have one preset, and when I'm on OBS, I have another preset. And I didn't even recognize it until I turned it on. Oh, that's my fault. So then we have this other case. Now, Jason had the case where he had something where he had no time. So I'm going to simulate that. Pretend that I take this. I'm going to get rid of all this. And now I have a case where there is no time here. Well, only the old school people know this, because this is what we had to do back in the day. We had to know that there was something called edit, insert, silence. And that's sitting over here under the edit menu. And most of us assign a keyboard shortcut to it, or put it into a macro or something to do it. So we just have a button that we would press, and we did that all the time. But here's the thing. If I put my cursor at the very beginning here, let me see. Let me make sure you see. I'm going to work with the yellow track. So with yellow track, have the cursor at the very beginning. If I invoke insert silence, then what it says is, oh, when do I want to start? When do I want to end? And it's defaulting to 1 second. And if I do nothing, then it'll add a second there. But it adds it across all the tracks. So that's good, bad, indifferent, depending on what you're doing. And you can see that it added a second there in that context, the way I had done it. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I don't do that anymore. But you could do that, and it seems kind of weird. Hey, it just added 1 second, and I'd have to measure it out. And if I was doing it at a different point where it wasn't the beginning, then I might have to say, well, do I want to add 4 seconds? And you get this weird thing. If you invoke this right now, edit, insert silence, now it says it's starting here. You could do the math and try to figure out, all right, where should that really end? Now, it is easy. By the way, people don't know. If I really wanted to, I could take this and I could roll my mouse wheel over this. Let me zoom in on this. Let me get this right here. So I click on this, zoom in. If I'm rolling my mouse wheel, notice it's changing this really quickly. And so I could just roll my mouse wheel and I could change what these numbers are. I can do this on this one too. And I could do it. I mean, don't do this, but I just want you to see. You have the ability. I went down to 0, it zeroed everything out. So you can roll over all these numbers. You could do this. That's the hard way. I'd never do that. I just don't do it. It's a waste. But here's the way it's really designed to work. If you'll select something first, and I just selected 4.6 seconds. You can see that there in the tooltip. I almost said that. You can see that there in the tool. I don't know why I said there, but you can highlight something, and as you highlight something, Studio One is going to use whatever you highlighted as the amount of silence to add. So watch this. Edit. Insert silence. Boom. Now it is inserted 3 seconds and moved everything over because I had selected something. If you don't select something, it will assume we want to do all the tracks. If you select something, it'll just move over on that track. I could do a fraction of a second here, 0.2 right there, use the same command. Normally I'd have this, and it'll just put a little, that was a quarter second or so. I don't know what exactly I selected, so I'm going to undo both of those. I'm showing you this because there's too many options. That's how we used to do it in the old days. Now, what'll happen today is almost all of us will have on Ripple Edit. If you're newer to Studio One, you came in after version 4, you started with Ripple Edit. And if you turn it on, Ripple Edit is right here. I'll zoom in on that. There's Ripple Edit right there. There's Ripple Edit off. There's Ripple Edit on. Turn it on. I run with it on almost all the time these days. It's a great little thing. And if we wanted to insert silence or insert, so we would end up just, you start, you highlight, and then when you invoke that command, with or without Ripple Edit, I'm going to turn it off right now, then I'm going to insert that silence. Cool. But here's the way. Now, there's really the reason people are inserting silence is because they ultimately, if they're doing an audiobook, they want room tone. So I totally cheat this stuff. On my template, I have a 1 second piece of room tone. So I created some fully processed room tone that will match the room tone after RX. I don't believe in this stuff where, oh, you have to record every day. If your room is changing that much every day, fix your room. That would be my first thing. Now, yeah, I know you'll have some publishers say, oh, record every day. And that's just because they had people in the beginning that didn't do a good enough job with their room. So assuming you have a decent job, a decent set of treatment and isolation in your room tone for 98% of the people will be the same every single day if you're doing it right. If you're not, talk to me afterward. We'll help you get your room set up, because you shouldn't need to record room tone every day. And by the way, if you had a publisher that wanted it, if they wanted 4 seconds up front, what I'd be doing is I'd have it there. I'd go ahead and I'd be copying it. And then the cool thing is, wherever you want, if you have Ripple Edit turned on, I'm going to take this 4 seconds here, and now I'm going to just insert it. Now I have a macro that does that and puts it in there. But here's the cool thing. Watch this. If you don't have a macro to do it and you have Ripple Edit turned on, I can drag, I can put it wherever I want. Now by default, there's this thing called a constrained drag. It will want to put it right on top, but then you can move it. So if I wanted to move it to the beginning and I do nothing else, okay, what happens is when Ripple Edit is turned on, it'll take that and it'll put that there. I'm going to undo that because that's not how I'd really do it. I would also add my Alt key or the Option key on my Mac, and what it is going to do is that's going to make a drag copy. And with Ripple Edit turned on, I just took and added 4 seconds of room tone to the beginning of my track. Okay, so you can add. So I have to admit, I'm going to undo that. I also do this stupid color thing that I came up with a couple of years ago. And I just always do it and still do it. And I do this. I know at the beginning of my track, I'm going to want 1 second. Drag up, hold down Alt or Option, and now at the very beginning, and I've even color-coded mine white. Why white? Well, because at the beginning of my day, the sun comes up. And then if I needed some at the very end, I have a couple seconds at the very end. I can take that and throw that at the end, and I will hold down Alt, so I made a copy, and I can put it in there. And by the way, I'd be hyper precise and get it on there at the very end like that. See, I don't even have to be precise when I place it. I can just drag it so that it's now the last few seconds. And now I have 4 seconds at the end. Now, because I had used Ripple Edit, if I go into that, I will now just trim off a little bit. And I really use my macro, which is a replace. So if you want to see how I really do it, I have a macro that does a replace. So let me undo this so you can see. Here's how I would be doing it. I have a couple seconds at the end. I am going to copy that. And then I'm going to click on the track where I want to go. and use my little cursor that will go to the end. So it takes the active track here, and we go to the end, and then when it goes to the end, and you get this whole bizarre thing that goes on. Oh, this always, let me tell you, I'm running some pre-release software in the background here. I've got a bunch of stuff running right now on pre-releases on actually more than one product right now of things that I'm working on for future. And I got this weird interaction that'll probably be over as soon as I get a new build on some stuff. That'll be over. But now I have this right here, and because I copied it, I will trim off whatever I want, and I'll use VO replace. And now what happens is I end up with 2.5 seconds, 4 seconds, whatever I selected is at the very end, and it's an exact amount of time, and it's the same room tone that was in this file here, and it will totally match. And now sunrise comes up in the morning, and at night it goes to sleep. And then that way I can see visually that I have the proper amount of time, and I've even labeled them. This cleverly is named RT 1 second. Do you have to do that? No. Cleverly, this one's named RT 2.5 seconds or 2.5. This one's named RT 4. This one's named room tone 10 minutes. I use that when I use the layer stuff. I have 10 minutes worth of room tone that's just sitting down there. By the way, this one is very often for me hidden because I don't need it on every project. And I have it when I need it, expose it with a couple clicks, and then I can use room tone. I can use 10 minutes. And of course, most of you know this, that Studio One gives you a very quick way to duplicate any piece of audio with one key. I just duplicated it, and now I have probably about an hour's worth of room tone. I'm going to undo all that crap. But so in other words, I keep 10 minutes on there all the time. And if I need more, I can make it up by pressing D a few times, and it's done. So there's all these shortcuts in Studio One that make it easy. So now I'm going to look for questions, comments. And Colette, glad you're here. Glad you're watching. And Michael Jackson, music. Yeah, howdy. Glad you're here. All right. So what you see is that I said Michael Johnson. There we go. You could be Michael Jackson. You could be Michael. Yeah. Anyway. Hopefully that makes it easy. What you see is there's more than one way to do it. I never, by the way, in the old days, we would have to, if we wanted to, like if I took out some time, all right, and Ripple Edit was not turned on, then I could go into this blue track here, and I would highlight over it, and I'd press delete, and it'd make a hole, and then I needed to select, and there is a command to do that. I know the keyboard shortcut to do it, and then I would have selected the whole track, and then I would, because they're all selected right now, then I would drag them all back over. Way too much work. Now with Ripple Edit, I'm just going to go ahead and have Ripple Edit turned on. And when it's on and I delete something, you'll see that right now it just deletes that little bit, moves everything over. So I could do that any place in here. You press delete, it's gone. You press delete and it's gone. So Ripple Edit is your friend. If you drag between areas here, I drag this up, and I happen to add insert, alt or option, then that makes a copy. It leaves the one down here, and it just puts this in and moves everything over for you. So even if you have something you want to insert in, whether it's room tone, whether it's a standard disclaimer, so at the very end you say, oh, and if you use Studio One, you'll get all these bad diseases, and the side effects include happy cats and super dogs and all that. If you have those kind of quick disclaimers, and you were doing an auto, my wife has an auto commercial, and at the end it had to say, yeah, there's only so many vehicles available every time, and the one you want may not exist. There's only 16 on the whatever. She had a disclaimer. It's also at the very end of all the medical things that she does, and she keeps it for that client and has it all pre-done, and she just copies it and drops it in every time because it's always the same disclaimer in those cases for those clients. So you're very often copying a piece of audio, pasting it in some place, and Ripple Edit is your friend. As a rule, I have Ripple Edit on, and some people say, well, do I ever want it off? Yes, every once in a while I do want the hole in my audio, but most of the time I'm going to have room tone sitting someplace if I'm working audiobooks, and like I said, 1.5 seconds, 2.5 seconds, 4 seconds, and 10 minutes is what I have. There's also the whole layer trick. If you're not familiar with that, yeah, I need to redo my video, which is 7, 8 years old on that. I did something 7, 8 years ago. I just don't, if you have RX, you really don't need to do that most of the time, but there's some easy ways to do that. And I'll do a new modern video on how I create room tone. having it long enough, how to duplicate it, because you do not need to have 60 minutes worth of audio sitting on your template anymore. In the old days, I did advise that. And I do get caught with this weird thing where there are times where I told people to do something 7 years ago. And then now there's, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are doing that same thing I did 7 years ago. And they just don't realize, because it worked, that I've come up with something that's way easier, less work, less keyboard, just less effort overall. There's a new way of doing it. And then, they've been doing something that's worked for them great. So they don't upgrade because that works fine for them. Well, the new people can do it differently. And I can't believe how many things I do differently today than what I did even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because there's better methods for doing anything. All right, let me see if there's anything. When you use Ripple, does it automatically do a crossfade at the edit points? Well, let's see. In this case, no. Depends on what we're doing. No, it does not put in a crossfade. Although, frankly, if I undo this, and so now depending on what you're doing, you may or may not want that. I press X. Of course, is the keyboard shortcut for putting crossfades across everything. That'll put 10 millisecond crossfade. So no, it doesn't by default. It does not put a crossfade in there. If you happen to use my insert or my replace, it does. So if I took this room tone, let me take a little piece of audio here. That's a great question. So I'm going to copy this audio here, and then I'm going to do this. And if you use my replace macro, then that does automatically put the crossfades in. So my macros do put the if you have this VO edit, you have this from the jump start, then it does a replace, it does an insert. If I insert it, it will also add the crossfades. If I replace, it will also do the crossfades. So yes, mine does, but Ripple Edit doesn't. But so what? Most of the time, and the times when a crossfade is a big deal and important, is if somebody has a higher noise floor. Low end rumble is the number one thing, and that will cause pops and clicks between segments. If somebody is now totally off the subject here and totally beyond what we're talking about, if you end up if you have low end rumble, what you really should be doing is making sure that we have a high pass filter on your input. And if you have that, you can eliminate 80% of the stuff that's going on your input before you even start. So I always have a high pass and a safety limiter on my input anymore. And then that cuts out all that low end rumble. And then you eliminate 90% of your clicks and pops. The only time I see pops and clicks anymore are when I have people that have a lot of low end rumble is the primary cause of that. And if you do, hopefully you can do something to isolate. But I do realize low end rumble is the hardest thing. And there are a lot of situations where people cannot do enough with their room to eliminate that, depending on the environment that they're in, the house that they're in, the apartment complex, the condos. There are cases where you just cannot eliminate that because you don't have control over everything. So crossfade is an X. And if I had to, I could go ahead and just with a couple keyboard shortcuts do crossfades. They're in my macros automatically. And also, even when we do this delete here, my delete adds a crossfade where normally people can just go ahead and press the delete key. There's no crossfade there by default. So I would have to add that one manually. My little delete does put the crossfade in. I also have insert silence here on a button just because we used to use this all the time. So anyone that's been around a long time, they will have used this edit. In fact, I almost never use these two anymore because I'm just pressing my delete key with Ripple Edit on, but you can. They work real well. And insert silence, the only thing is by default, it goes ahead and if you do not have anything selected, then it kind of says, well, how much time you want to insert? And then you have to tell it time-wise, and that's kind of a hassle. I don't know, not that big a hassle, but it's just a couple extra baby steps. The way we really use it is we click and we say, I've just dragged 2.5 seconds, and I'm going to use insert time, and it's going to insert 2.5 seconds because that's how much I had highlighted. It will do your highlight, so it visually does something. And of course, when you highlight something, you get a little tooltip there that you can see, and it tells you that I have 1.6 seconds, 1.1 second, 0.037, 0.735 seconds are shown there in the little tooltip. So I can see how much I've dragged before I do that, but I just don't do that anymore, or I just do that very rarely. Shouldn't say I don't do it anymore. one of the things that happens if you've been doing this long enough, you do almost everything at some point. It's just some things you do very little, some things you do a lot more. All right, let me look for any more questions there and see if there's anything else I can help with. Okay, so let's see. So I got to hold it. What it really comes down to is some of these things are that. Oh, I see why. Hold on. That's just, let me see more questions here. There we go. I didn't have a screen wide enough. Colette, I didn't see your question. Let me answer your question here. I tried several times and it still doesn't work. I definitely work. Let's see. Let me see which one you're saying it doesn't work. Can you show how to add color to just one event? Every time I try to color the whole thing, I think it's helpful to see a different color. Oh, yes. So, yep. Watch this. All right, let me turn off my zooming here. So all you have to do, you have to select one event. So one event selected, right click, and right there is the color picker for the event. If you're over here, this is a color picker for the track. Okay, so over here is track. Now it's orange, but I can take any event, or if I take a range, I get to double click and make an event, and then I can go ahead and click, and now I can change its color to anything I want. So Colette, that should work. And make sure that you have an event selected. Okay. If you have a whole bunch of things selected, if the whole track is selected, or if your track is one event, then it is going to change it. So I changed the color, like I did that. Let me make these small. I'll make this big. So here's my room tone. This one is a right click, and then I can change just it by itself. But if I have multiple selected, shift key, I can also change them all to red, green, blue, purple. You can change multiples. So you can do multiples. You can do a single one, but you have to select a single event here, and then it will allow you to save the color, and that'll go ahead and save it. This does the track color over here, and this one does the event color. By right-clicking any place in the event, you can get the existing and go through and do this and change that. So Colette, try that. And it never worked, even though I select an event. I'll try again. Yep, you have to select an event, right-click, and it's there. If not, I want to see what you're doing, because that definitely should work. Okay. So, all right, I've got to go. I have another session to do, but let me check for any more questions that I missed in that, because I didn't have the. Do you have room tone layer in there, but turned off? I don't have a. In this example here, I don't have a room tone layer. I decided to do that another step, but I have room tone that I've saved before, and I can make that room tone work. So if you have questions about that, send that to me, and I will cover that in the next live or another live over the next couple days. I have a session to do with a client that I have to start, and I'm late on right now already. He's probably going, "What happened to this guy?" So hope you guys have a fantastic day. And I hope, I don't remember who, Jason, I think, asked this question originally. And I hope you see that there's more than one way to do it. It's easy. And there's definitely, but Ripple Edit is your friend for a lot of this stuff. And then copy. And when you drop in, it'll move things over for you automatically. Ripple Edit, been around for a few years. Absolutely great. Should have been there in the beginning. Is there now. Has been for 4.5 years. So it's a really useful tool to have, and it's now part of everything I do. Like I have it on by default in all my templates because I use it so much, or I don't even think about it anymore. It's just on. That's the way to do it. You can do it through the edit menu, but not needed anymore. All right. Hope you have a great one. We'll talk to you all soon. Throw some more questions below this and watch it on YouTube. Subscribe. If you're on YouTube, note that there's a Facebook group with 4,200 people. Be sure to check that out. Join us. And then you can see it in the show notes. And of course, I have a new every Tuesday VO Tech Simplified live. And then in the mornings, I do, Johnny Heller and I do a joint, just general audiobooks and voiceover related stuff. We do a live 1 hour on Tuesdays as well. All those are on the channel there. So hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you soon. See you on the wires. Bye.